The Trump administration has further escalated tensions with Iran, and the conflict is now coming to a head as the administration has ordered another 1,000 troops to the Middle East and has vowed again that Iran will not be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Now, we've said on the show multiple times, the best way to ensure that Iran doesn't obtain a nuclear weapon is to remain in the Iran nuclear deal. But Trump has decided to pull out of that, of course. The additional 1,000 troops, according to the New York Times, being sent to the region comes on top of 1,500 dispatched in May. They will be used to mainly surveil Iranian activities and protect American forces already in the Middle East. The Pentagon has considered plans for deployment of up to 6,000 additional troops. This is a disaster. And it seems like we're moving very quickly toward the direction of war. But mind you, Trump is still kind of holding on to this idea of renegotiating the nuclear deal. He's being pushed in the direction of war by people like Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo. But there have been a number of conservative, talk show hosts on Fox News of all places who are trying to get Trump to rethink what he's being pushed toward, right?
Yeah, and even some otherwise loathsome Republican congressmen actually standing up and doing the right thing here. Look, I'll always take yes for an answer. So if we have allies who we normally do not like, but that are trying to help prevent the war with Iran, fantastic, definitely will take it. So before we get to those guys, look, this is the main problem with Donald Trump being unintelligent. So if you want to start a war, it's super easy to do it. Because yes, he does have that instinct of I don't want to get bogged down in the Middle East, but he also has the so-called instinct of I'm going to be tough, I'm going to be strong. Don't let anybody accuse me of weakness. So they use that and they press on that button, and it's very easy to do. And they say, oh, Iran attacked us. Now that's not true. Pompeo is flat out lying. So some of it was misdirection and not necessarily true. Now he's gone as far as clearly, patently, obviously lying. So we'll get to that in a second as well. And so, and he's not bright enough, Trump's not bright enough to realize that Pompeo and Bolton are warmongers. Everyone else on the planet knows that, but Trump's so unintelligent and so unmoored from the facts and doesn't know any politics at all. So he thinks like, oh, these are honest actors and they say Iran attacked us, what can I do? I just show how strong I am. And the more troops you put right next to Iran, the more likely it is that there's going to be some sort of conflict. And then once that happens, they've already said the red line is attacking any American ships or American personnel. Now, you think Bolton and Pompeo aren't going to put some American soldiers in the line of danger, hoping that they get attacked? If you don't think that, you don't know anything about John Bolton.
In fact, reporting indicates that, and I'm talking about reporting from various sources, including the New York Times, indicates that Iran has been very careful to stay away from anything related to the United States. So stay away from the US military, stay away from any type of US ship. And they just don't want to cause any type of accident or any type of mistake that could be misconstrued as an act of provocation, which would then give the Trump administration more of an argument to go after Iran militarily. Now, we're gonna get to the members of the right wing who are against going to war with Iran, but before we do, I wanna just go to a quick video featuring Tom Cotton, who also absolutely loves going to war. Take a look.
What kind of response is warranted?
Well, Iran for 40 years has engaged in this kind of attacks, going back to the 1980s. In fact, Ronald Reagan had to reflag a lot of vessels going through the Persian Gulf and ultimately take military action against Iran in 1988. These unprovoked attacks on commercial shipping warrant a retaliatory military strike.
You're comparing the tanker war in the 80s to now and saying that that's the kind of military response you want to see?
We can make a military response in a time and in a manner of our choosing, but yes, unprovoked attacks on commercial shipping warrant a retaliatory military strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran.
So let me be clear, we talked about that oil tanker and how it was allegedly attacked by Iran. The US government has really failed in providing real evidence for that. They showed a grainy video, they then later released some photos indicating that no, these photos actually go against what the Japanese are saying about their oil tanker and how it was attacked. Remember, the Japanese believe that their oil tanker was attacked by a projectile. Whereas the Trump administration originally said, well, it was because of mines, and they made it appear as if the mines were somehow implanted underwater. Now they're saying it was not a projectile and it was a mine that was implanted above water. But the stories keep changing. The evidence is minimal and isn't even really reliable, to be quite honest with you. And so to hear Tom Cotton regurgitate that talking point, I guess should be expected, because he's just like the Lindsey Grahams of the world, who gets funded or had been funded by weapons manufacturers, by private military contractors, and they love going to war. So they're gonna push us in that direction.
So there's, Tom Cotton's very squarely in the neoconservative hawk portion of the Republican Party. He's a younger version of Lindsey Graham. There isn't a war that he doesn't want to make love to. He's a terrible, terrible guy. And he's the one that betrayed America by writing a letter to the Ayatollah and telling him to not listen to our president when it was President Obama. So that's who Tom Cotton is. And so now let's talk about the good guy Republicans, and shockingly they exist in this case. So Matt Gaetz, of all people, one of the worst people in Congress, is actually on the right side of this issue. He's actually working with Ro Khanna. He's working with Ro Khanna to say you are not allowed to use military force here. We did not authorize this back in 2001, and he's on the right side of this. Rand Paul is on the right side of this. Now, you might not be surprised, because Rand Paul's a libertarian and he doesn't want war, and he doesn't want the executive branch having this kind of power. But that's all in theory. Rand Paul, at the end of the day, always votes with Trump and always bows his head. But for the moment being, in the early stages, Rand Paul says, I can tell you explicitly, you have not been given power or authority by Congress to have a war with Iran, and in any kind of semblance of a sane world, you would have to come back and ask us before you go into Iran, he told Mike Pompeo. Now, that's a great quote. I see people think we're biased. We're not biased. All we care about is which side are you on the policy issues, right? So if Rand Paul and Matt Gaetz agree with us that war in Iran would be a disaster, well, that's a no-brainer. But still, and a lot of Republicans very, very, very often don't go on the side of the no-brainers. So here, I'll take it, and good action by them. And then even Tucker Carlson getting involved and saying, don't do it. And then he references that Pompeo might be misleading you, which we're gonna get to. And then I'll tell you the quote from Pompeo that is definitely a lie.
Right, and I just wanna give you a little more context into what Rand Paul was responding to, because the Trump administration is arguing that they can move ahead with military action against Iran without even dealing with Congress. And what they're doing is they're citing a 2001 congressional bill that greenlit America's military response to the 9/11 attacks to strike. So they're using that as an example of, we don't even need to get approval from Congress. We're gonna move forward based on what Congress had done back in 2001. Which, by the way, this is why it's important for Americans to not sit back and allow Congress to fearmonger you into, loosening our system of checks and balances, because they gave the executive branch way too much power in that case. Now, with that said, I do want to go to conservatives in the media and what they have to say about it. Trish Reagan, who is a Fox Business host, and you've probably seen her on Fox News as well, had an interesting way of speaking directly to Trump, okay? But she had to spin this in a way that would really resonate with him. So take a look at what she had to say.
The Iran conflict will prove to be a real test for Donald J. Trump. He must follow his instincts, and he must stay far away from the noise Iran is trying to make. For now, he should resist military action and sanction, and sanction some more.
Okay, so the weird baby tone, she's talking to a baby, it seems like, but she kind of is, yeah. But notice, I don't know if it was subtle, but she framed it in a way that makes it seem like Iran is trying to drag you into war, right? She's not gonna blame the Trump administration. She's not gonna go after Bolton. She's not gonna go after Pompeo. But she did go after Iran to make it appear as if Iran is trying to drag Trump into war, which is not the case. But I don't care. She's doing this as a way to persuade him to avoid military action against Iran.
Yeah, it's almost like Nancy Pelosi saying, well, Trump wants to be impeached, so don't give that to him. So Trish Reagan's like, Iran wants to be invaded, right. So don't fall into that trap. Great, I'll take it. That doesn't make any kind of sense, but I'll take it.
Yeah, so let's hear a little bit more from her segment.
There are, remember, politically motivated, self-interested people everywhere, including in America. And there are people in America that would like nothing more than to see us engaged in a war with Iran because they know war could very well spell the end of Trump 2020.
So to give you some more context, again, she was careful to avoid going after the war hawks on the right. She was careful to avoid going after Pompeo and Bolton. She tried to make it appear as if Democrats are the ones goading Trump into invading Iran, which is of course not the case. But again, if this is the strategy she's using to persuade him to avoid military action, awesome.
But look at the conversation that we are constantly having around Trump. One side is trying to trick him by saying, now they think you're weak. You should be strong, baby Trump. And the other side is like, no, baby Trump. No, the Democrats in Iran are trying to trick you into invading Iran. That would end your chances. Baby Trump, don't do it. I mean, he's such a simpleton that they have to talk in these ways. And we're all on pins and needles like, who's going to be able to better manipulate the idiot president? And that's the conversation we're having, and the whole world hinges on it because this would be a massive and disastrous war. So now, finally, we get to Tucker Carlson, and then I'll tell you Pompeo's lie that everyone, including Tucker, is mad about. Let's watch.
So far as Iran has denied any of this, some allies are skeptical as well. The United States narrative is being questioned, even in Japan. That's the home country of one of the stricken tankers. Japan says it's not convinced that Iran is responsible for what happened. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says, in fact, the proof of Iranian involvement is, quote, unmistakable. Of course, this is not the first time the Secretary of State has expressed total confidence in the sinister intent of a Middle Eastern country. Colin Powell made a very similar case to the United Nations 16 years ago about Iraq, and we're still paying the price for that misplaced certainty.
So yes, excellent. And so people say, hey, you can't compliment Tucker Carlson, he's a white nationalist. Yeah, I know. Take yes for an answer. If he's against war with Iran, he is correct on that issue. So I'm happy to have his support on this because I got news for you progressives. Donald Trump isn't gonna listen to us, but he might listen to Tucker Carlson and he might listen to other people on Fox News. So there's two lies. The first one that Tucker's referring to is one we've covered already. So they say, oh my God, the Iranians came in the middle of the night and they removed their second mine because they had, it had not exploded. Yeah, while the whole world was watching a tanker that is on fire, the Iranians decided to dress up in goofy outfits, okay, and pull up next to the boat and go, oh, I guess this is the mine we left behind. We will now take it. Right. Except every witness says it wasn't a mine. It was something that came from the sky. So it was a missile. And so when we say, oh yeah, they planted that bomb earlier and then they came back to the scene of the crime to take away the other mine, it is a comically bad storyline, not backed up by any of the witnesses. But that's actually not the big lie I'm referring to. That one we've covered. The second one is Pompeo now comes out and says, oh no, we don't have to ask Congress to start a war, even though the Constitution says you have to. He says, because no, they authorized it already back in 2001. But wait a minute, that authorization of force was against Al-Qaeda and anyone helping Al-Qaeda. That's why we went into Afghanistan. Now, that's why that part made sense because Al-Qaeda was based in Afghanistan and the Taliban was protecting Al-Qaeda. Now, then they stretch it to Iraq and they had to lie about that. Dick Cheney said, oh, Mohammed Atta went to the Czech Republic and met with Al-Qaeda. Total lies, lie on top of lie on top of lie. And the media did not check that nearly enough back then. Iraq had no connection to 9/11 or Al-Qaeda and hated Al-Qaeda. But Iran hates Al-Qaeda even more. Iran is Shia, Al-Qaeda is Sunni. They're both fundamentalists and they despise each other. They've been battling each other for decades. So to say, and Pompeo now literally says that Iran is working with Al-Qaeda. What a preposterous lie. What an insane lie. Like for example, you might say, hey, I hate the Soviet Union under Stalin, he's a terrible madman, and I hate Adolf Hitler and the Nazis in Germany, well, that's both very logical positions to have. If you said in the middle of World War II, as Hitler is destroying Stalingrad, that the Stalin and Hitler were working together at that time, well, it would be 100% untrue. They were mortal enemies. Now, could they have worked together, etc.? In that case, actually, it's more likely that they could have worked together than having the most fundamentalist Shia and the most fundamentalist Sunni working together. Iran has nothing to do with Al-Qaeda other than the fact that they hate them and oppose them. So if you're a journalist, look, I'm not asking for too much. You've got to do at least as well as Tucker Carlson. Because in the beginning, they reported that the eyewitnesses on that ship all contradict the Trump administration's line on it. But since then, the New York Times and every other paper that I have read, I've now read dozens of articles, none of them go back and allude to that. They just say the Trump administration alleges that the Iranians attacked the ships, alleges that the Iranians attacked the ships. This is the same exact trick they used during the Iraq war. Bush says America's safer after attacking Iraq. Bush says Saddam had something to do with 9/11. Bush says this, etc. And here we are right back in it. Trump says the Iranians attacked the ships. No, you must correct that every time, even if you don't want to call it a lie. You at least have to say eyewitnesses say the opposite. And if you don't give that context, that's how we get lied into a war. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.